Yeah, I think it's going to be a roller coaster in terms of league positions this year. You'll come in Sunday mornings or Saturday evenings, you're maybe in the top six, and then the next week, a game later, you could be sitting in 11 for 12, so to speak. So I think it's going to be a roller coaster of a season. So I try personally just to not really look too much at the league table. It's not anything we speak about internally, and it's just probably about focusing on the next game. Now, don't get me wrong, after your 11 games, everybody's played each other once, there'll be a reflection period. We will have a wee review. If we need to adapt, we'll adapt. But I think right now we're unbeaten outside the Old Firm. So I think the boys have got to take a lot of credit for that. I think that's going to be it. Like, you look at Kilmarnock put Celtic out of the cup, took league points off of Rangers. I think I'm correct in saying in the league it's maybe only Ross County at Kilmarnock that's beat them, and we all know how contentious that game was. So I think Derek and his players were really unlucky in that game. They probably shouldn't have came away from that game with nothing. So that shows you the task in hand, how hard it's going to be travelling down to Kilmarnock and trying to pick 3 points up. I think I've said it in the past, I've been very vocal. I think Derek's one of the best managers in Scotland. So there's a reflection on the park because of that. So it's going to be a difficult game of football. I think he's got that down to a T. He's got a structure in Dale's own philosophy, and I think when you're now probably seeing more of an imprint in terms of it's Dale's team. He's had a couple of windows to get the players in that he's looking for. Played against his Aberdeen teams, found him hugely frustrating at times, and then had probably that bit of budget that allowed him to bring in not a maverick but better quality players at the top end of the park. So he knows Scottish football inside out, he knows football inside out himself. He's played at a very, very good level, and I think you can see that his teams are always well coached. They're difficult to break down, but again they pose an attacking threat, and I think you can see that in this Kilmarnock team. I think our first game down there last year, I think Big Joe scored two. It was 2 set plays, might have been the year before, but that was his first year in the league, so I know how big a threat he is. You also had Ashcroft also, so this year it's changed slightly in the dynamics in terms of the personnel, but they'll still carry a huge threat of set plays. Set plays make up around 35%, give or take, of the goals you score throughout the season. So I think Dale probably attributes a lot of that training time on that, as I do. I like to spend some time on that. It's an area of the park that can potentially pick up 9 to 12 points a season, but again, if you don't do it right, you can potentially lose 9 to 12 points a season. I look at shapes, and I think me personally, like at Livingston, I think the players dictate the shape. Now, don't get me wrong, I went out in the summer with a clear recruitment plan in terms of the shape I was wanting to play going into this season, and so you're trying to recruit players for that shape, but it doesn't always work like that. They come in the building and it doesn't quite, what you've seen on Wyscout or what you've seen in certain games doesn't quite correlate onto the training park, so then you have to adapt to that. So I'm big on the adaptation of the players. They dictate the shape. So for me, I recruited in a certain shape. We are playing that shape this season, but we've fluctuated in games between a back four, a back three, a 3-5-2, a 3-4-2-1, a 3-4-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. So there's been a lot of adaptation within the squad in terms of the game, and you look at it, you go and watch a game of football at any point in time, I think you'd be lying if somebody said, oh, they're bang on, that's their shape. Certain teams are maybe a wee bit more rigid and they're not as fluid. I like, personally, my players to have a wee bit fluidity in there. So watching us play, I'm not so sure you could say that's exactly what they are. Maybe a back three and a back 3-4's more easily to identify, but for the mid to front areas, there's a wee bit of fluidity there, a wee bit of rotations, movements, and again, it's 10-15 yards either way, and it looks as if you're playing a different shape, a different system. I think that's where the first 11 games, you probably have a review after these first 11 games, and then you'll see it changing. You'll see maybe teams at the bottom end of the table start changing and adapting for them to go and pick points up. So by them doing that, we've obviously got to adapt to that also. Then comes the January window. There's potentially managerial changes. There's potential, well, there is player changes in the January window. So throughout the season, it's kind of a constant evolution of, obviously I want to do what we want to do, but again, I think you've got to adapt to what the opponents are doing as well. And certainly away from home, maybe at home you can be a wee bit more structured and a wee bit more rigid in terms of how you feel the game should be played with that group of players, but away from home I think you've got to adapt to the opposition. Certain teams do. I think at the bigger teams this is what we're doing and this is what we're playing, but I think budgets do dictate that slightly. I signed a contract late in the season for club licensing. Like, I speak to John and Dave in the building, so not John McAvoy, John Ward historically, Robert Wilson, but Dave Black this year, and we sat down at the start of the season, and I would never walk out in this club. I don't need a contract to safeguard my position. If John and Dave came in, the two Johns and Dave came to see me now and said it was time for you to move on, I wouldn't cost the club a penny, whether I had no contract or a 5-year contract. So Livingston's been very, very good for my life, for my career. So it doesn't really mean a lot to me, if I'm honest. And if somebody chaps the door or somebody phones me, it's still going to be Livingston's decision whether David Martindale remains the manager of Livingston or whether David Martindale moves on. It'll be led by the people in the building. So I probably need to sign a contract, but I'm not in any major rush, to be fair. But I will sit down with John. It's just trying to get that ideal moment. It's probably last week, to be fair, but the boys had a wee bit of time off, and then when they come back in, we had a bounce game on the Saturday. So although you were on an international break, it didn't actually feel it. You were still preparing for a game, so it was difficult. Team news, in a good place. So I'm trying to think of the ones that will be coming back. Danny Lloyd missed out, Cristian Montaño missed out, Mick Devlin, all three of them have had a very, very good training week, and they trained last week as well. So all three of them will come into contention. Mo Sangari and Luigi are back. Well, they'll be back tomorrow from international duty, but both have no injuries to report. Well, they've not told us they're injured, but so that was the two that you probably look at and you go, it's out with my control if they're going to be available, but both of them look to be available. So we're in a no bad place, to be fair. Played a bounce game on Saturday, came through that fairly well. Had a reserve game yesterday, came through that fairly well. So we're in a good place in terms of the squad.